I still remember the sound of the rain that night. It wasn't soft or romantic like in the movies. It was relentless, like nature was pounding on the walls, reminding you that you were small and vulnerable. It happened 3 years ago, and I still flinch whenever it rains too hard. I've never told many people this story, but after what my cousin Jordan went through, I feel like it needs to be said. Jordan had always been the quiet type, soft-spoken, rational, the kind of guy who always had a practical answer for everything. We grew up together in Massachusetts, but we hadn't seen each other much in the last few years since he moved to New York for work. Then in the summer of 2021, he invited a small group of us for a weekend getaway at a lakeside cabin in Vermont. It belonged to a friend of his who was out of the country and had offered it to him for the weekend. It was one of those old wooden cabins built in the 60s, nestled deep in the woods near Lake Elmore. No nearby neighbors, no cell service, just nature, silence, and the water. The group was small. Jordan, his girlfriend Emily, our mutual friend Zach, and me. We drove up on a Friday afternoon, and when we got there, the place looked eerie, even in daylight. The cabin was beautiful in a rustic sense, but it had that heavy ancient air, like too many stories had happened there, and not all of them were good. There was an oddness to the way the house sat, too, like it was a little crooked, not physically, but spiritually. The dock out back creaked as if it had a memory of someone drowning. The lake water was too still, and the inside had this subtle but noticeable smell, damp wood and something faintly metallic, like rust or blood. I chalked it up to old pipes, but even Jordan noticed it. The first night went by peacefully enough. We had wine, grilled some burgers on the porch, played cards. But sometime after midnight, things started getting strange. Emily swore she saw someone standing just beyond the tree line, tall, thin, unmoving. Zach and I went out with flashlights, but found nothing. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that the shadows between the trees were watching us. You know how your instincts just scream sometimes. Mine were starting to whisper. The next day was cloudy, cold for a summer morning. I went out on the dock alone to clear my head, and that's when I noticed the water. It wasn't just still. It was reflective in a way that didn't feel natural, like looking into it too long would show you something you weren't supposed to see. I could see my own face in the lake, but it wasn't quite right. The angle of the smile was off. The eyes weren't my eyes. They looked older. That night, it rained, hard, the kind of storm that knocks out power and drowns the silence with a wall of sound. Around 1:30 a.m., I woke up to what I thought was thunder. But it wasn't. It was a scream, loud, long, and agonizing. It sounded like it came from the woods. Jordan burst into my room a minute later, pale and shaking. He said Emily was missing. We searched every inch of that cabin. Her shoes were by the door, her phone was still charging, and her jacket was hanging on a chair. But she was gone. Zach and I went into the woods with flashlights, yelling her name until our voices gave out. The rain soaked through our clothes in minutes, and the trees seemed wrong. Taller, darker, like they had shifted slightly while we weren't looking. Eventually, we called the local sheriff's office from the landline. They arrived 2 hours later, and by then, Jordan was in shock. He kept muttering something over and over. It's the lake. She looked into the lake. We spent the entire next day with the local search and rescue team. Dogs, drones, thermal scanners. They threw everything they had into finding Emily. But it was like she had evaporated. No tracks, no signs of a struggle, no clothing in the woods, nothing. Jordan sat in the living room of the cabin wrapped in a blanket, watching the rain hit the windows. He looked hollow. At some point in the afternoon, I sat down next to him and asked what he meant the night before. She looked into the lake. I expected him to brush it off or say it was nonsense, but he turned and looked me dead in the eye. "I think it took her," he said. "What do you mean, it?" I asked, even though I was already scared of what he might say. He explained that 2 nights earlier, he'd gone out to the dock by himself while everyone was sleeping. He couldn't sleep, and he wanted to sit by the water. While he was there, he said he started to see something in the lake, a shimmer, like something under the surface. It looked like a face, not his own reflection, but something else, something older. He told himself it was a trick of the light and went back inside. But then Emily started talking in her sleep. He said she was saying things like, "Let me go," and "Don't pull me." Then that night she woke up screaming, drenched in sweat, insisting that there was someone at the edge of the bed. Jordan said he searched the entire room, but the door was locked from the inside, and then the next night, she was gone. I wanted to write it off as trauma, panic, or even some kind of breakdown. But when I looked at Jordan, I saw something I'd never seen in him before. True terror. This was a guy who used to laugh during horror movies. Now he couldn't even look at the window facing the lake. A few weeks later, I tried to look up the property. I wanted to see if anything had happened there before. And that's when I found something strange. The land had once belonged to a family in the 1940s. 3 daughters and a father. The mother had died in childbirth. The youngest daughter, aged 17, drowned in the lake. Her body was never recovered. The other 2 sisters eventually moved out and sold the land. But there were mentions in some old newspaper clippings of townspeople claiming the lake was cursed, that people had gone missing near it every few decades, all under similar conditions. Rainy nights, no signs of struggle, no bodies. I tried showing the articles to Jordan, but he refused to talk about it. He stopped responding to my messages a few months later. Last I heard, he moved to Arizona and hasn't been near a lake since. Every time it rains now, especially at night, I can't help but think about Emily, about how something might still be out there in the water, waiting for someone else to look too long, to see a face that isn't theirs. And maybe, just maybe, when they do, they don't come back. It was the summer of 2016 when my cousin Jeremy invited me to his family's lake house in northern Michigan. I was 21, freshly out of college for the semester, and itching for a break from city life. Jeremy had been talking about this secluded lake house for years, how peaceful it was, surrounded by thick woods and almost no neighbors for miles. It sounded like exactly what I needed. But I wasn't expecting the story I'm about to tell you. Nothing could have prepared us for what happened that week. I still remember the exact feeling I had the moment we pulled off the gravel road and parked in front of the house. It was late afternoon, and the sky had that washed-out blue hue just before dusk. The house itself was beautiful, rustic, but solid, with a big wraparound porch and a view of the lake shimmering through the trees. But something felt off. Not in a way I could explain at the time. Just a faint chill that danced across the back of my neck as I stepped out of the car. Jeremy and I were close growing up, but he was always more of the adventurous one. While I was the type to overthink everything, he was the guy who'd dive off a cliff into the water before even checking how deep it was. So when he suggested we spend a week alone at the lake house, no parents, no friends, just us and the woods, I agreed, thinking it would be a great chance to reconnect. The first day was normal, peaceful even. We unpacked, grilled some burgers, and sat on the porch, listening to the frogs chirp as the sun dipped below the trees. That night, I slept better than I had in months. No sirens, no traffic, No glowing phone screen, just the soft rustling of leaves and the occasional call of a loon across the water. The second night is when the weirdness began. I woke up around 2:30 a.m. to a faint knocking sound. Not loud, not frantic, just a soft tap, tap, tap that seemed to be coming from the back of the house. I lay there for a moment, heart beating a little faster, telling myself it was probably just a branch tapping against the siding. But then it came again, more deliberate this time. Tap, tap, tap. It wasn't until I sat up and listened more closely that I realized it wasn't coming from the wall, but from the back door. I glanced across the room at Jeremy's bed, empty. I pulled on a hoodie and made my way through the dark house toward the kitchen, where the back door was. Every floorboard seemed to creak like thunder beneath my feet, and the chill in the air felt unnatural for a summer night. I stood in front of the door and stared at it, heart pounding. Nothing. No shadow through the frosted glass. No movement outside. I flicked on the porch light. Still nothing. When I opened the door, the cold air that hit me was sharp enough to make my eyes water. I stepped out onto the porch and looked around. The woods were dead silent. No crickets, no frogs. Just an eerie, oppressive stillness. "Jeremy?" I called out. No answer. Then I saw it. Just at the edge of the tree line, maybe 20 feet from the porch, there was a figure standing motionless between two trees. I couldn't make out their face, but I could tell it was tall, maybe 6 feet 5 inches, and thin. Too thin. It wasn't Jeremy. I knew that instantly. The figure didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there, watching. I slowly stepped back inside and locked the door. A few minutes later, Jeremy came through the front entrance, holding a half-eaten bag of chips. "Dude, where were you?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. He raised an eyebrow. "I went to the truck to get snacks." "Why?" I told him what I'd seen. His face changed immediately. He didn't try to laugh it off or call me paranoid. He just said, "That's not the first time." "What do you mean?" He sat down, quieter now. "Last time I came up here with my dad, he said he saw someone out by the woods one night. Tall guy, just staring. We thought it was a hunter or something, until we saw him again the next night. And the next I stared at him. And you didn't think to mention this." He looked down at his hands. "I didn't think you'd believe me. Hell, I didn't even want to believe it." That night, we stayed up with the lights on, trying to act like nothing was wrong. But around 3:15 a.m., the knocking started again. This time, it came from the side of the house. Tap, tap, tap. We peeked through the window but saw no one. Still, we grabbed a flashlight and crept onto the porch again, sticking close together. Jeremy swept the light across the trees while I held my breath. That's when we heard it. A low, drawn-out groan. It came from the left, deep in the woods. It didn't sound human. It was like a moan, layered with static, distant and distorted, like it was being played through a broken speaker. Then came the rustling of leaves and snapping of branches, something moving toward us. We bolted back inside. For the next 3 nights, it escalated, shadows passing by the windows, the power flickering randomly, a voice, one night, calling Jeremy's name from outside in my voice, but I was right next to him. On the 5th night, we found the trap door in the living room. It was covered by an old rug we hadn't bothered moving before. Jeremy nearly tripped over it, and when we pulled it aside, there it was, a square wooden hatch, sealed with 2 rusted latches. No one had mentioned a basement. I wish we hadn't opened it. We had no idea what we were expecting when we opened that trap door. Maybe some old storm cellar, maybe storage, maybe nothing. But as we pried it open and the thick scent of mold and decay hit us, I knew immediately something was wrong. It wasn't just the smell. It was the temperature. The drop in warmth was instant. as if whatever was below hadn't seen sunlight in decades. Jeremy shined the flashlight down, and we saw narrow wooden steps leading into total darkness. No finished walls, no visible floor, just void. Still we climbed down. It wasn't curiosity, it was fear. If there really was someone, or something, coming to the house every night, we needed to know everything about this place. And if the house had secrets, now was the time to uncover them. The basement, if you could call it that, was nothing more than a carved-out cavity beneath the house. Dirt walls, uneven floor, spider webs so thick they felt like fabric. As the flashlight beam skimmed over the space, I noticed strange carvings on the wall. Symbols I didn't recognize, circles with slashes, shapes that resembled twisted human limbs, something that looked like a sun with too many rays. Jeremy whispered, "Do you see that?" I turned. In the far corner, half buried in the dirt, was a wooden crate. We walked toward it slowly, careful not to kick up too much dust, and opened it. Inside were photographs, dozens of them, old black and white, some badly water-damaged, but the subjects were clear. People, always standing alone in the woods, always at night, always staring straight at the camera. Some of them had strange distortions, their faces stretched or blurred, like something had been wrong with the lens, or with the subject. There were notes, too, handwritten in tight, slanted cursive on yellowed paper. We read only a few lines before I had to stop. "He comes for the lonely ones. He speaks in your voice, never answer. You can trap him with light, but only for a time. Never look directly into his eyes." We didn't say a word to each other as we climbed back out and sealed the trap door shut. I was shaking. Jeremy looked like he was going to be sick. We should have left then. We should have driven through the night, back to the city, back to people, back to normalcy. But we didn't. I don't know why. Maybe we were in denial. Maybe we thought the worst had already passed. It hadn't. That night, around 3 a.m., the power went out. We were in the middle of a game of cards, trying to pretend we hadn't just found evidence that someone had been watching people from this very house. When the lights cut, we froze. Then the knocking started again. Tap, tap, tap. This time it wasn't just from the door. It was from every window, every side of the house. Tap, tap, tap. The sound of hands, not fists, pressing against glass in unison. Then we heard my voice, clear as day, say from outside, "Jeremy, open up. I forgot my key." Jeremy grabbed my arm, and I swear I've never seen that much fear in his eyes. "You're right here," he whispered. I nodded. Then the voice came again, angrier this time. "Jeremy, let me." And he pulled me toward the kitchen and reached under the sink. I had no idea what he was doing, but when he came back up with a flare gun, I suddenly realized he had come more prepared than he let on. He led me out the front door, yes, out, because the back and sides were all compromised, and aimed the flare gun into the air. The flare lit up the sky like a mini sun, casting long, warped shadows from the trees. And that's when we saw them. Figures. Not just 1, 4, 5, 6, lurking just at the edge of the woods, all tall, all impossibly thin, all unmoving. They looked like mannequins left in the rain too long. Limbs too long, necks crooked, faces smeared as if half melted. When the light faded, we bolted back inside, locked everything, and waited out the night with our backs against the bedroom door, knives in our hands, and a candle between us. By morning, they were gone. We packed in under 20 minutes and left. We haven't spoken about it much since. Jeremy sold the house through a third party. I heard he never even went back to pack the rest of their stuff. Just left it all behind. Sometimes I still wonder what we saw. Whether those things were always there, watching. Whether they had been waiting for someone to find the trap door, to read those notes, to know. And I still dream of the voice. My voice. Outside, knocking, asking to be let in. It was the summer of 2017 when I first met Diane's family in upstate Vermont. We were about 8 months into our relationship, long enough that meeting the parents was inevitable, but not so long that I wasn't still trying to make a good impression. I took a week off work, packed light, and drove us both up to her family's old countryside home, a pale blue colonial surrounded by dense woods and humming silence. I should have known something was off the moment I stepped onto the porch. It wasn't anything dramatic, no sudden cold chill, no eerie wind. It was subtler, a sense that the quiet here wasn't just peaceful. It was too still, like the air was holding its breath. Diane didn't notice. She was excited to show me her childhood room, to introduce me to her parents. Her mom was sweet, her dad a little stiff but polite, and to take me hiking near the lake where she used to camp as a kid. The first 2 days were exactly what I'd expected. Small town quiet, early dinners, board games, and hours without checking my phone. It was almost nice, until I saw the man by the tree. It was late evening. I'd gone out to the back porch to get some air while Diane was helping her mom with dinner. That's when I noticed him, standing just beyond the tree line, not moving, facing the house. He wasn't wearing anything unusual, just a red flannel shirt and jeans. But something about the way he stood there, like a wax figure lost in the woods, made my stomach turn. I watched him for a minute. He didn't wave, didn't call out, didn't blink. I went back inside and asked Diane if they had any neighbors nearby. She said not within walking distance. When I mentioned the man, her father looked up from his book. "Where exactly did you see him?" he asked. I pointed out back. He stood up, walked to the window, stared for a while, then pulled the curtains shut without a word. The rest of the evening was tense. No one mentioned it again. But when I woke up around 2 a.m. to use the bathroom, I noticed her dad sitting in the living room, shotgun across his lap, staring out the window. The next morning, I asked Diane what was going on. She brushed it off. "This place makes people nervous sometimes," she said. "Too much quiet." But I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something her family wasn't telling me. 2 nights later, it escalated. I was alone in the kitchen grabbing water from the fridge when I heard someone whisper my name. Not loud, just barely above breath level. I turned. No one there. I walked to the hallway. Still nothing. Then it came again. Ethan. Closer this time, as if someone was standing just around the corner. I rushed into the living room and found Diane's father there again, sitting in the dark. Before I could say anything, he spoke. "He talked to you." I stared at him. "What?" "The man in the woods. He said your name, didn't he?" My blood froze. "Don't answer him," he said. "Don't ever answer, no matter what voice he uses." I didn't sleep at all that night. Every creak in the floorboards, every rustle of leaves outside had me wide awake, heart hammering. I didn't see him again for another day. But when I did, it was worse than I remembered. This time, he was closer, standing right at the edge of the backyard. Same blank stare, same stiff posture. But now his mouth was moving. I couldn't hear the words, but I could see his lips forming something over and over again. My name. Over and over and over. I yelled for Diane. When she came out and saw him, she didn't scream or panic. She just slowly pulled me back inside and locked the door. She finally told me the truth. The man had been around since her childhood. No one knew who he was. He never approached, never spoke, at least not that anyone had admitted, but he was always there, watching. Some people claimed he only came for certain visitors, that he somehow chose them. The last time he'd appeared was 5 years ago, and before that, nearly 10. It's always someone new, Diane said. Always someone who doesn't belong. I asked why her family stayed, why they never left. She didn't answer. That night, I heard my own voice calling from outside the window. "Ethan, open the door. It's me." It was identical. Same pitch, same rhythm, but I was in bed, very much awake. I didn't move, didn't even breathe. Then I heard it again, this time from the back door. "Ethan, please, Diane needs help. Hurry." I nearly ran. Instinct almost took over. But I remembered what her father said. "Don't answer." I stayed in bed, every muscle locked, and eventually the voice faded. By sunrise, I'd made up my mind. I was leaving. When I told Diane, she didn't try to stop me. She just looked sad, as if she already knew it had to happen. Her father gave me a ride halfway down the old gravel road, said it was safer that way. We didn't speak the whole ride. When I got out and thanked him, he handed me something, a cassette tape. "Listen to this if you ever hear him again," he said. "Not before." I never did hear the man again, but I haven't thrown away the tape, and I haven't pressed play. After I left Vermont, life slowly returned to normal, or at least what I thought was normal. I went back to my apartment in Boston, returned to my 9-to-5, and tried to shove the entire experience into a box labeled Weird Country Superstition. But it didn't stay in the box. About a month later, I got a call from Diane. Her voice was distant, shaken, nothing like the confident, composed woman I'd been dating. "He's here," she said. I didn't know what to say. "At your place." She hesitated. "Number, I mean, there, where you are." I laughed, thinking she was joking, but she wasn't. "He asked about you, used your name, said he missed you." I felt the blood drain from my face. "Diane, what the hell are you talking about?" She didn't explain, just warned me, "Don't answer the door at night. And if he speaks to you, don't respond, not even once." Then she hung up. That night, I didn't sleep. My apartment was quiet, too quiet. The city noise that normally bled through the windows, honking, drunken shouts, sirens, was absent. It felt like someone had muted the entire street. Around 2:46 a.m., there was a knock. Not loud, just a soft, steady tap, tap, tap on my door. I froze. There was no peephole, no security cam. Then came the voice. "Ethan, it's me. Open up." It was Diane's voice. Exactly. Every syllable, every breath. Perfect. But I knew better. I stood frozen for almost an hour before the sound stopped. The next morning, I checked my hallway security cam. Nothing. No movement. No figure at the door. But I did find something odd. A small strip of paper slid under my door. No handwriting, just a symbol. A crude drawing of what looked like a tall, faceless figure with 2 dots where eyes might go. That evening, I remembered the tape Diane's father had given me. I dug it out from the drawer and stared at it for a long time. My curiosity was burning a hole in my patience, but something told me, wait. The next incident wasn't a knock. It was my phone, a FaceTime call from my own number. I answered it instinctively. Big mistake. The screen went black for a moment, then showed a blurry, low-resolution feed of what looked like my apartment, but from the outside across the street, like someone was watching from a rooftop or fire escape. Then the camera panned slowly to the left, and I saw him, the man from Vermont, still, silent, standing in the same red flannel, but now smiling. And then I heard it, through the speaker, my name, over and over. But it wasn't a human voice. It was like it had been stitched together from recordings. Artificial, wrong. I dropped the phone. The screen cracked. The call ended. That was the last straw. I packed a bag and booked a hotel for a few days, somewhere across town. I didn't even tell my friends or co-workers. While there, I decided to listen to the tape. It started with silence, then a hiss, then the voice of Diane's father. If you're hearing this, he's marked you. That's the only reason I'd ever let this out into the world. You need to know what he is, or what he isn't. He went on to explain the history, how the entity, whatever it was, had haunted their family land for generations. No one knew where it came from, only that it could mimic voices, read thoughts, and follow you, if it learned your name. I don't mean just know it, he clarified. I mean if you gave it your name, if you answered it, that's the invitation. He explained that it can't hurt you directly, not in the traditional sense, but it feeds off something deeper, off attention, fear. The more you engage, the more real it becomes, like a virus embedding into your life. The only way to escape it, he claimed, was to deny it presence, to forget it existed. But once it starts following you, that's nearly impossible. Whatever you do, he said again before the tape cut off, don't let it wear your skin. I had no idea what that meant until the next night. Back in my apartment, everything seemed fine until I went to brush my teeth and saw something impossible in the mirror. Me, but not me. The reflection smiled while I was frowning. It blinked when I didn't. It moved a second too slow, like a lagging video call. I screamed, and the reflection just smiled wider. I left the bathroom light on that night. Didn't look in the mirror again for days. Since then, I've moved. Twice. Changed my name legally. Got rid of all old social media. Cut off contact with Diane completely. And yet, last week while walking home from work in Chicago, someone passed me on the street and whispered, Ethan. I hadn't told anyone that name in months. I didn't turn around. I didn't respond. But I knew. He's still watching, still waiting, still wearing that smile.